I sampled the most interesting horror manga the other day, and I just want to talk about it a little bit. This one does have a fairly long name, so I'm just going to put it somewhere. This one is based off of a light novel, and currently I think it just has the one volume of the manga out. I'm pretty sure it's very new. And as far as my knowledge goes, there is no English adaptation yet. Fingers crossed. I hope it gets one because it's very unique, I'll say. I think it's very good. I've only read the first chapter because, again, volume 1 is on its way to me now. And so I will only be talking about what happens within the first chapter here. Again, this is a horror story. It's like, as of chapter 1, it's not like terrifying. Like, there's no like gore or anything, but it is scary. So if you don't like scary stuff, click away. That's okay. So let's talk about what happens in chapter 1 of this spooky manga. So in this manga, we follow our protagonist, who is a young man with a desperate need for somewhere to live. He's searching for a new apartment. He's a little bit anxious that he can't find somewhere to live when he comes across a rather strange apartment listing. It says it's looking for a tenant who doesn't mind living somewhere that may or may not cause disturbances to his life. His everyday living situation might be disturbed if he's not easily adaptable. The price is right, though, so he applies, gets in, and more or less, he is able to ignore all of the weirdness that goes on within the apartment. So, for example, when he was first being shown the apartment, the real estate agent warned him that tens and tens of people have previously been driven out terrified by something in the apartment. He's fine. He doesn't get scared all that easily. He can manage. He's able to ignore the human-shaped stain, I think, permanent shadow on the bathroom curtain. But there is something that he has not been able to conquer his fear of. It gets to him, and that's his next door neighbor. So whenever the young man steps out onto his balcony, his next door neighbor somehow also is able to step out on the balcony, almost like the neighbor is watching his every move and knows where he is within the apartment. And whenever the two of them are on the balconies together, which again is every time the young man's on the balcony, his neighbor talks to him like they're buddies. And every time he starts a conversation, he'll start it as something like, "Hey, I heard this from my friend, but..." And he will start to say a scary story. Now, this neighbor isn't all that good at telling scary stories, but our protagonist is a kind young man and he listens to the stories until the end each and every time. And the young man will think to himself after, even though he isn't all that good at telling stories, I do often listen to the very end. He has a nice voice, and there's something about the stories that are interesting. It's just the way that he tells them is so not good. He can't really put his finger on it, but he does listen to the very end. But the young man always thinks to himself after each and every story that the neighbor tells him, you yourself, you my neighbor, are infinitely times scarier than any story you could ever think up. Because his neighbor is a literal tentacle monster. And the young man, our protagonist, seems to think that his tentacle monster of a neighbor doesn't realize that it's a monster. The way that the monster acts, it really seems to believe that it itself is just a normal human with a nice new neighbor who doesn't mind chatting with him. So every time he steps out onto his balcony, this creepy, crawly tentacle thingy will slowly creep more and more closer to him until he eventually goes back inside. And it doesn't seem like the creature is all that nefarious. It seems like it really does just want to be friends. And as it's telling its stories, it gets excited and wants to get closer to his neighbor because they're on balconies together. But again, tentacle monster creeping closer and closer to you, that's terrifying. But somehow the young man is able to not let his scaredness, not let how scared he is of this monster show on his face. He has a good poker face. He listens to the end, will always say, "Okay, thanks for the story. I'm going to go in. Good night." And then only when he gets back inside of his apartment is he able to go, "That was scary." And that is what happens in chapter 1 of this one. I think it's crazy. I really like scary stories that have scary stories in them. So, like, this one is a really good example, or the new Grim Fairy Tales? Grim Night Tales is what it's called. Grim Night Tales, where within the manga verse, there are characters that like to tell scary stories. I find these types of horror manga to be my favorite recently. I just think they're really interesting. I like a good, like, campfire scary story. And these are the type of series that like to tell those types of stories. So they already get my vote. But on top of that, his neighbor being a literal tentacle monster is just so out of pocket. It's so surprising when it's introduced. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to continue reading. And I was kind of debating with whether or not I wanted to buy the light novel or the manga first, because typically I like to do the light novels first. But they only had the manga in stock, so that's what I got. But I really would like to buy the light novel just to see how differently it describes the literal tentacle monster of a neighbor. And yeah, that's this one. I am very excited to continue reading. I do have a lot of difficulties finding horror manga that I like, because typically the more popular ones find a way to objectify women every single time, and I really don't like that. So if you have a recommendation for a horror story that doesn't need to objectify women to tell a good story, let me know, please, because I'm always on the lookout. I'm always searching. One of my favorites is Karasagashi, or Re/Member. It doesn't have an English translation, but it does have a movie. I think a new one's coming out too. I haven't seen the movie yet, so no spoilers. But Karasagashi is one of my favorites, and it has a female protagonist, and she is never objectified, and I really like it. And I have only the first 11 volumes, so I haven't been able to continue, and I'm very sad about that. But yeah, if you have any recommendations, please let me know, because I'm always on the lookout.